When I think of veneration today, people generally think of like Catholics and Orthodox, as far as like venerating images. But if I look at like any Protestant church, or at least any classic Protestant church, they probably have a cross up high somewhere, and maybe even at certain liturgical seasons, they'll drape like different cloth over it, right? Would you consider that, given the form, the definition of veneration we have so far, and the way we've talked about the cross, would you consider that veneration?
I would, I would, yeah. And I actually remember as a high school student, I briefly attended an evangelical church. I was raised in kind of a more, I would say, a progressive United Methodist type of a background, but I briefly attended an evangelical church in high school, and it was very interesting. It's interesting to look back on it now, but during Holy Week, which they actually had like kind of like a Holy Week celebration, they um, they did drape, um, you know, like cloth over the cross. They brought a cross to the front of their church. They draped cloth over it, and then they had people write down their sins and fold them up and place them under the cross. And now that I'm looking back on it, it does strike me there is actually more image veneration um, among Protestants than it appears at first glance. There's acts like that which clearly are interacting with the prototype, the actual cross of Christ, and then ultimately Christ Himself by means of an interaction with the image, and where the image is being treated as a point from which you can address supplication to God. So I do actually think that actions like that are veneration. My goal in early icons, it's not to show that the pre-Nicene Christians venerated images in a way that Protestants would be uncomfortable with. It's just to show that there was veneration. And so, if, as it turns out, the modes of veneration that were done in the pre-Nicene Church are things that Protestants are actually quite comfortable with, all the better. That actually, I mean, that's kind of helpful in a way. But in doing so, it would be showing that the objection to the Second Council of Nicaea, which says there's literally no precedent for image veneration in the early church, every early Christian was aniconic, no gesture veneration, maybe the late 7th century or maybe the late 6th century, it would be showing that those kinds of claims are incorrect. So that's more the goal, is to defend the claim, defend the Second Council of Nicaea and Orthodox and Catholic claims about it against the accusation that there's zero precedent for any kind of gesture of honor in the pre-Nicene Church. Yeah.
That makes sense, and I think it's good for people to remember that, or at least to entertain the idea. I won't say remember, but it's worth entertaining the idea that veneration might not solely be all the category of things you're uncomfortable with, while not including the category of things that you are comfortable with. I know the example you gave of like putting sins at the cross is something that I did in my evangelical church growing up too, and there's definitely there's a reason we're doing it at a cross there, right? We're not just putting them in a bucket. It's because there is some kind of honor in this image of the cross. And so, whatever people will do with that, I think it is helpful to think, well, maybe veneration's a bit broader than I thought.